Welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. Here's your host, Tom Bourne.
Good.
Hi, and welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. I'm your host, Tom Bourne, and with me today is the marvellous Rob Kirkwood. Rob, how are you?
Good, Tom. Good. Thank you. Yeah, good to chat.
Mate, I love that smile. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Someone's smiling when they're talking to me. That's unusual.
Well, the sun's out, that's why.
The sun's out. Oh, I wish it was over there. What's the temperature roughly like over there at the moment?
Well, see, I'm West Coast, North Island. It's reasonably mild. There's snow on the mountain out here. And I think today might be about 16 or 17 degrees.
That's the temperature here in Perth. So
Yeah,
8 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
I said to the wife earlier, I said, I think we're on exactly the same latitude as those areas that she came from. But
Right.
enough of that.
Yeah.
Rob, you didn't start your career in safety, so what
Who does? Who
Oh,
does?
do you know how many times I say to people, how did you get into safety? And
Yeah. Some people get demoted and end up in the safety department.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, no, I didn't. I guess I've been in a sort of a formal, an official health and safety role. Probably, let me think about this, maybe 18 years or so. Where I've had health, safety, environment in a title, where I've actually been doing this stuff, looking after management systems and a whole bunch of stuff. But prior to that, really, time's moving on. I used to say 20 years prior to that, but it's probably 15 years prior to that. I worked in the outdoors, in the mountains mostly, and that's kind of where I really got the safety. I wouldn't call it a bug, but I got to understand about safety and I got to understand about risk. So, I used to work as a mountain guide on the South Island of New Zealand and done a whole bunch of work in that environment overseas, Antarctica, kind of managing outdoor risk and managing large groups of people. And it wasn't really until I came back and I moved. I left a job out working out of Antarctica, and then I moved to the region I'm in now, which is predominantly energy, oil and gas. And I didn't really know what to do with myself. And so I started, and I was an industrial abseiler for a bunch of time. And then I was working on, petrochemical sites and gas sites. And I thought, okay, there's a lot going on here. And there's a lot of safety stuff going on.
Yep.
And that's where I made the transition. I saw a job advertised and I went, oh, okay, this is a health, safety and environmental training job. That's what I've been doing. I didn't know it was called that. I've been doing that for the last, 20 years. So it was a nice transition, kind of, hanging up the harnesses, hanging up the crampons, and then getting more involved with yes. Yeah.
Good. Antarctica and people. Interesting combination.
Yeah.
Any good stories to tell about Antarctica?
Well, it's it's got to be one of the most amazing places to ever visit, let alone work. And I was very fortunate that I had probably the best job on the continent. So I was a safety guy. So we worked. There's about 4 of us working in this really small team, and our job was to essentially ensure. Well, to start with, because the base the Scott base that's set there, its main focus is to provide support to science. And so you'll get a whole lot of scientists come down, and then they need to learn how to, operate in that environment. And so part of my role was around inductions, essentially providing a safety induction, so they knew how to use all their equipment, their transport, their clothing, because it's you can't learn that stuff anywhere else apart from down there. And then, so there was part of that. Then there was a whole lot of safety related roles, which was making sure the access routes onto sea ice onto the ice shelf was safe for people and vehicles to go on. We did a whole lot of supporting scientists, so we'd get them set up and they would fly into the backcountry and build a camp for them, stay for 2 or 3 days, and then fly out again. And then the other part of it was with the American search and rescue team. So we had a joint search and rescue team. So we did sort of technical search and rescue work. Fortunately, we never had to use it in anger. I can't really remember. We might have had to look for someone that got a bit pissed one night and walked the wrong way out of the bar. But it's just a fascinating place. And if you don't know anything about Antarctic history, then when you go down there, you learn it very quickly, because the stories of survival and how to manage risk. If you go back to managing risk, holy shit, those guys, they did some remarkable things. So I don't have any kind of quirky stories. It was just a fabulous place. Yeah. I do remember I went and supported a New Zealand science group way up high in the Victoria Range, so a long way north from Scott Base, and we were supported by a helicopter business, Helicopters New Zealand, that were based out of an Italian base. And so I was up there in a safety kind of field assistant role, and it was a beautiful evening, and it was my turn and another scientist's turn to cook for everyone. So we made pizza dough, and we made pizzas for everybody. And the pilots came down from the Italian base with all this Italian red wine. It was like, oh, this is pretty sociable. And so we're sitting outside on deck chairs eating pizza, drinking red wine, thinking this is awesome. And the mountains and the sea ice and the ocean is phenomenal. And then the pilots said to us, hey, and they weren't drinking, just be clear about this. They said, we came across this incredible emperor penguin colony earlier today. And so we filled up 2 helicopters of scientists, and we flew through these massive tabular icebergs, like weaving like this. And then we landed on the sea ice, and then there was, 10,000 emperor penguins just in this little valley. And we were just sitting there. And the deal was none of us were taking cameras. So I've got no photographic evidence, but it was the one time in my life I've gone, holy shit, this is what living's all about. This is incredible, and I've never forgotten it. I've got no photos of it, but I've never forgotten it. It's just remarkable.
Does it sadden you a bit that the environment down there is reportedly changing?
Well, there's no doubt that global warming is having an impact. There are on the Antarctic Peninsula, which is below South America. There's reports of new types of grasses growing that have never been found before. So that only happens when the temperature, the base level rises. But I get into a lot of discussion around climate change, and I work down there with some of the international leading experts in climate change and oceanography, and they were saying, look, there's no denying this is a real thing. And you sit around and have dinner with these guys, and that's what they've spent their life doing. And everyone used to say, oh yeah, but it's cyclic. It's the Earth is warm before, and it's like, and they'll say, absolutely, we totally agree with you, but not at the rate we're seeing now. So, when you see, I'm only there for a little snapshot of time, but those guys have been going back 30, back to back 30 summers, and they've seen the changes.
Yeah.
So it is a shame. It's terrible. But
I guess risk assessment in Antarctica is a bit different than what most safety professionals would encounter day to day.
Yeah. Hey, well, the thing is, working in that environment, if I take it back here, I've been living here for 16 years. So let's say 16 years ago, working in that environment, we risk assessments weren't really, formal risk assessments weren't really part of the vocabulary. And this has been the big takeaway for me is shifting from working in the outdoors in that high risk natural environment to coming into, like in my case, the energy sector, where the risks are still high, but they're different. They're quite different. But the layers and layers of administrative stuff that goes on just didn't weigh it up. So working on the ice and working in the mountains, by default, and I didn't realize this, but by default, you understand the risks associated with it and you understand how to assess them. But if someone said to me 20 years ago, hey, can you do a risk assessment review matrix or whatever on this activity you're doing, I'd be like, what do you mean? But if, and it comes back to critical risk management, but if someone was to say, hey, how do you manage the shit that's going to kill people here? Then, what we refer to now as sticky risks, right? How are you going to manage the shit that kills people? You say, well, this is exactly how we do it, and you can just bang it out. So, risk assessments weren't formal risk assessments weren't a thing, really. They might have been in some, dusty folder somewhere, but not in normal work, not in the work that we were doing. We were competent, technically capable, skilled and experienced people.
Here's the thing. Before bits of paperwork came around that we had to tick boxes for and cross-reference matrices and stuff like that, people still successfully managed to do jobs, didn't they?
They did, yeah. And I really like that. I mean, we do, and that's kind of, I'm really pro new view safety. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work in that area. And, again, if you take that philosophy around, most of the time, 99 point whatever % of the time we do things well, things go well. Occasionally we cock it up, and sometimes, and most of the time when we cock it up, there's no real consequence. No one gets hurt or damaged or whatever it might be. Occasionally they do. And then just watching over the years about how much effort and resources and cost and time goes into trying to rectify that really small percentage of time when it goes wrong. But we've been doing things right for a long time. I didn't kill anyone in the mountains, and I never had any paperwork. But there's a lot of stuff going on up here. There's a lot of planning going on, which, it was a conversation. And it comes back to this, the new view, especially around safety differently, is around, in this case, we were the masters of the blue line. We were the people who knew how to do it really well.
Yeah. Look, do you think the obsession with paperwork isn't about safety at all? It's more about legal liability?
Well, I do to a certain extent, or to a large extent. There's, I've worked for organisations where, let's face it, there's been a failure of some description, someone's been hurt or something's gone wrong, and often it's, hey, let's check the whatever it is, the swims or the JHA or the JSCR. Let's check that first, or let's check that you have done your take 5 or step back 5. So there's all this default fallback. Look at the paperwork, and if the paperwork doesn't tell you what's happened, then clearly that's the failure. And so, as I've matured, and clearly we all know that that's not right. I get it from a large organisation. They've got to have some form of assurance program in place.
Yep.
I just don't think we've nailed it yet.
Yeah.
I'm very vocal about some of the administrative drama that goes on in the energy sector, layers and layers of administration that add very little value. And in fact, I got in trouble one time. We were working, we had a job in central Queensland, working on a gas plant there a number of years ago, and for a large Australian asset owner. And of course, us sort of Taranaki, Kiwis went over there, used to how we do stuff. Again, masters of we sent the good guy, we sent the A team. And there was an HSC advisor working for the client, and of course I was back over here, and we got notification that we had to produce these sort of safe work method statements, and I remember one of them was for unloading a truck. So we had some pallets of pipe work arrive that were going to get unloaded with a little telehandler. And he wanted the swims for one of these. And of course, I said, right. So I banged one out, sent it through to him, and it was just redlined all over the place. It was crossed out and had comments. And in the end, this is no lie, it ended up being 45 pages, 45 steps in this process. Not 45 pages, that would be a little bit overkill. And then I kind of lost my rag. I said we had a group teleconference, and I said, this is the amount of administrative work that we've had to do is disproportionate to the risk. Yes, someone could fall off their truck, but holy heck, how many trucks are being loaded and unloaded every day across the world? We're not killing people. So let's keep that in, but they just couldn't. They couldn't think like that because they were a contractor working for a large energy client, asset owner that required, the contractor shall do A, B, C, D, including all of these things. And that's really frustrating.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I speak to people literally every day, and they say, even the smart safety professionals will turn around and say, we have very little faith in the paperwork we're required to fill out. Very little faith that it actually does anything. However, principal contractor requires that we do this to say that, so it continues. And it's just like, it's safety madness in my point of view. I don't understand. Someone a lot smarter than me said, this thing here, pieces of paper, they don't protect anyone. They don't protect anyone. It never stopped anyone getting killed, a piece of paper.
No. And look, I absolutely, I see value in doing a really robust risk review prior to a project. But when it comes to routine tasks, day in, day out, and, there are these sort of daily checklists and daily JHAs or JSAs required to be completed, that everybody knows they add no value. The guys filling them in, the people telling the guys to fill them in, you can see it in their eyes, and the white of their eyes, they're like, yeah, I know, there's no, there just seems no justification for it. Yeah. But I get it. I get there's a balance between doing something and not doing anything. And the issue with someone like me says, oh, this is bullshit. You automatically get the, clearly you don't care, or you want people to get harmed.
It's just,
and I don't have the answers for that, but I do like to push back on some of that stuff.
Now, being a guide and having a lovely members of the public, we'll call them members of the public, under your control. Human behavior, it's so predictable.
It depends on which country they come from.
Oh, you mean they're all good from Australia, right?
Yeah, they are. No, you're right. Absolutely right. Spot on.
You're smiling again. So
no. You just don't know what's going to come out of some of those Australians' mouths. That's all.
Oh, well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. No, look, they people did some strange things. And it's a bit, it's a bit like, looking at incidents that might happen. You think, what on earth was that person thinking then? But, I guess in the guiding sense, we knew that people would do funny things, strange, make odd decisions based on that environment that they're in. And Antarctica is a classic for that, where you've got these really highly educated scientists, and you put them into that environment, and all the common sense goes out the door. And so you can't say this guy is stupid, because clearly they're not. They've got more letters after their name than anyone, and they're a global expert in whatever they're looking at. But some of the things you'd think, why are you doing that? Why are you attempting to do that? Clearly that's not going to work for you. So it's just acknowledging that people will make odd decisions. But I guess what I've learned is it makes sense to the person at the time. So they'll do something, and if you query them on it, they'll often go, I'm not sure what I was thinking. If I did know what I was thinking, I'd be able to tell you, but I don't know. But it's the same with incident reviews and investigations, or it does make sense to the person. Why did you stick your finger or your hand, through that guard to pull that bit of stuff out? Well, it just seemed the right thing to do.
I wanted to keep the machine going or something.
Yeah. So there's always reasons. So, but in the guiding world, there is certainly a high expectation that people are going to do make some odd decisions, and so it's about being on board with that and aware of it, and on edge.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why a guide has got, a really flexible neck, is because they're always looking like this, wondering where people are.
Yeah. I don't envy the guides who were looking after White Island when it happened. I think they were forced to make some tough decisions based on things that they may not have been prepared for. So
no.
And
and that's, I'm not one to I'm not going to comment on that, because I don't know intimately, but I've seen the documentary, read a bit of stuff around the WorkSafe prosecution, etc. But there's a lot of that natural environment, those situations and the organisations that are working in that environment. I mean, we were one of them, working in the mountains in the South Island, where you were at the mercy of something happening. I mean, there's a number of times I've been involved with people, a group of 5 or 10 or even more, where we've had massive, like, car-sized rocks fall out of the bush way above us, and you can hear them bouncing, and we've run. And if we didn't, whether we would got hit if we didn't run, but that this is some real shit going on. This is stuff that's going to kill people.
Yeah.
And so I imagine those guides would have been very aware that it was a pretty high, intense environment. But who knew it was going to do what it was going to do, and to the extent that it was going to harm people? I mean, it's horrific.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about that, and I don't know very much, I'm like you, I've seen the documentary, etc., was it's amazing what regular human beings do to help each other in times of particular crisis. I think there were some real examples of human spirit there, where people just stepped up to the plate and took responsibility that they didn't have to. They just did the right thing. So
yeah. I mean, the guys, that flew the helicopters back in there when they were told not to.
Yeah.
They've just been officially recognised for that level of bravery just recently. But you watch that guy, and you listen to him, the main helicopter pilot, and he's very much, there's no way he was ever going to let anyone tell him not to go. He knew he had to do something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of respect for willful non-compliance in that case.
Yeah. That's right. That's it does. Yeah.
It's an interesting topic, anyhow.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think we do see a lot of that, and actually, I see a lot of that in the workplace where it makes sense for someone to do something, even though they know that it's it doesn't fall within the the process or the procedure, but they do it because it makes sense to them at the time.
Yeah,
with true intent, and their intent is to do the right thing. Yeah,
and you're exactly right about people who do things that we consider strange, and that no one ever sets out, that I've seen, to get themselves injured at work or anything like that. There are a set of circumstances which for them at the time, considering the context, conditions, etc., make perfect sense. And the main thing is not to crucify them for that, but to understand why that context and conditions existed for them to think that decision they were making was logical.
Absolutely. And I certainly follow the HOT principles in our business, and systems and context drive behavior. So if you take that approach and you live by that principle, then you've got to really pull back the layers to understand what's going on, and by holding judgment, then you'll often get to the core of it. Because it'll come. It'll be obvious. It's obvious to them. It'll come obvious to you.
Yeah. All right. Safety differently. You've already told me you're a big fan of it. All right.
Yeah.
For those who don't know anything about safety differently, perhaps they've lived under a rock for the last few years or something. What is it, and what is it different from?
Oh, I'm no academic, Tom, but I guess over the last few years, and especially coming out of the mountains and looking at some of the safety management systems that people have been operating on, and I know a number of people have done this, have gone, this is great. Why are we doing this? This is crazy. There's got to be a better way. And so I stumbled across a few people. I remember seeing John Green online one time years ago talking at a conference, and thought, this guy is really speaking something that I can very, very easily relate to. And it kind of, this is probably about 8 or 9 years ago, I guess. And so it really got me reading and thinking and talking. And I guess that, for me, the safety differently processes around, ensuring that you've got the worker as at the center of all your decision making. The worker has a solution around what you do or what you need to do. I come back to this master of the blue line. So the people, the black line, blue line thing, workers imagine, workers done. And I come back to myself when I was working in those high risk environments. There's no way in the world I would let someone else based in an office with a procedure tell me how to do my job. I still don't like when it happens, but and I go, well, if that's how I felt, that's exactly what we need to be doing, making sure that the people at the sharp end, the people on the front line feel. So for me, safety differently is a whole bunch of stuff. And I mean, this is, there's a whole bunch of books written about this, right? So, but for me, it's all about making sure that you've got a human-centric approach to how you manage risk in your business. And so, I kind of refer to that whole, I refer to a new view now, for the last couple of years, because I can see benefits of a whole bunch of things. But I'm really aligned to the HOT principles, the human and organizational principles. And a few years ago, I did some training with Bob Edwards through Southpack. He came to our business. And, the big takeaway for me was, this is actually not about safety at all. This is about this is about business. This is about organizational improvement, organizational learning. And so that's why I like it. And I actually, my catchphrase over the last couple of years is about the importance of removing health and safety from your vocabulary. Because the more I do this sort of hop stuff and new view work, or work in that with that lens on, the more I see it. This has got huge benefits outside of managing safety. So, it's a no-brainer for me. We've really taken it on over the last few years. It's those kind of key principles they're at the heart of what we do. The benefits to our performance, our output, our culture, the way in which we communicate with each other is just, it's just gone leaps and bounds. And so in our business, we don't talk about safety as such. We talk about risk. We talk about loss. We talk about improvement and learning and performance. And part of that was because part of that shift was really because when you talk about health and safety, you could, to a group of people, you could hear their eyes roll back in their head. And so, I think the health and safety practitioners have a pretty hard road sometimes. And I kind of used to nudge heads with a bunch of people because of how I saw things. But I found that once I removed and stopped talking about safety, then you got people on board. And that's the great thing about the new view outlook, is that it's not purely about safety. It's about organizational performance, which, from a business owner's point of view is great, because, they're more than happy to invest when there is greater good than just safety.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, let's have a think. In your corner, what is it? What do you do?
Oh, well, I've got it's a little side gig, really. So the company I work for, Energyworks, I only work for them 30 hours a week. And part of that is because my wife died a few years ago, so I have got three school-age kids, so I'm around for school time, in and out of school time. I only work school hours. And so In Your Corner is great because it provides a bit of a side gig / kind of consultancy opportunity. And the great thing about In Your Corner, so it started by a couple of chaps in the South Island. One of them's Jono Brent, and Jono was the CEO of Kinetics, which was electrical, electricity distribution business in Christchurch.
Yep.
And he came across Daniel Hamadal in Australia at a workshop talking about safety differently. And Jono went through this workshop and thought, this guy's making so much sense. So in the end, he brought Daniel across to Christchurch, and they developed what was known as Kinetics differently. So he embedded those safety differently principles into his business. And while he's since moved on to another number of executive roles, but what he saw was this real gap where organisations were doing what they were doing with the people that they had, but occasionally they really needed a few subject matter experts to come in and help them, whether it was sort of, some executive coaching or leadership, or it was strategic planning or whatever. So him and a few others joined together and created this In Your Corner, which is essentially a privately owned leadership coaching and consultancy business, but it's not a standard consultancy. And what they've done is they've developed a community of advisors or subject matter experts, anything from creating, organizational breakthroughs to sustainability, IT support, future of work stuff. And so I was talking to Jono about, essentially the new view outlook. And of course, he was completely aligned, having been involved with safety differently. And we said, look, there's got to be a way in which we can support other businesses across New Zealand into understanding how to lead differently with looking through the new view lens. So we've done a bit of work with him. So John and I have run some master classes around leading differently. We're just starting to develop now a coaching and mentoring service, which essentially is aligned similar to an EAP service, where a company will say, "Oh, here, to your employees, I'll give you 3 free counselling sessions," but instead of doing it, reactively, we'll do it. Hey, you got 3 free or 6 free coaching and mentoring sessions with someone within the community. Yeah, so In Your Corner is about providing subject matter experts for either a one-off or embedded in a business to kind of help you, give you the kick that you need. And the great thing about the community is we're all in paid employment, so we're not full-time consultants. We're actually we're doing our own thing. So one of the community is Darren Shand, who's the All Blacks manager. And so he runs some high performance masterclasses for us. So, there's this incredible, I feel like a bit of an imposter because there's some really smart people in that community. But what I see is, often, especially in this health and safety field, is you've got people going through the day-to-day and sometimes lose sight of the bigger picture. And so part of my role is to be able to help organisations go on and pull back the layers a little bit and say, right, what's the plan here? You're kind of going from an annual plan to annual plan. Surely there is something a bit in the health and safety space. There's some longer term objectives you want to work on. So that's what I like to do, is go in, identify some gaps, come home again.
Fair enough.
and leave them to doing it themselves. Well, leave them to do the work and embed those changes.
Yeah. All right. In your experience in health and safety, it's a tough question, but is there anything that's common? Any common factors involved in workplace incidents?
Oh, well, actually, I used to work with this Welsh guy years ago, and if there was any incident, the first we would talk about the incident and what the causal factors and so forth. And the first thing he would always say to me, even without getting a brief on what happened, he would say, organisational failure. I'd say to him, oh, come on. Every time, management failure, organisational failure. And I go, oh. And so we'd go away, right? And you'd do whatever it was, an ICAM investigation, whatever was kind of hot at the time. And you couldn't argue with them.
Yep.
You could stop at human error if you wanted to, but we all knew that was, and more often than not you did, because that was the easy way out, and because you knew that an organisation was never going to change that much in order to address its failings. But I think that's again, if you take this kind of new view approach of, people will make mistakes, and even the best people make mistakes, and no one really intends to make those mistakes. It's very rarely ever malicious, but in systems and context drives the behaviour. So if you're pulling back that, then there's always these deep underlying organisational failings that are going on. So, critical risk control management. If it's all very well to say, oh, this guy allowed this thing to happen, but if there's no robust critical control management in place, and those critical controls don't allow you to fail safely, then it's an organisational issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I think it's just about how we as practitioners can provide that information and support and true understanding, rather than blaming the pilot error all the time.
Yeah.
It's easy to do, right? It's easy to blame the pilot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But conversely, there seems to be, as you said, there seems to be three outcomes you can have from an investigation of an incident. And you can basically, I've got these three boxes, and however you want to, then you can structure the outcome of your investigation. It's either going to be operator error or human error or whatever we want to call it, management error or lack of supervision, or it's organisational failure. And depending on your flavour or bent, you can almost basically, you save yourself a lot of time and just pigeonhole it straight now. And you can collect your evidence just to base which box you want to tick. That's the only danger I see with shifting, and we should shift it away from blaming the worker all the time, is I worry that we're just not looking for another person or another party to blame. I think things are a bit more complex than just it's this or it's this or it's that.
Oh, absolutely. I think the days of finding one true root cause, it's far too complex. There's a whole bunch of shit that goes on that we have no control over.
Yep.
But certainly over the last few years, really embedding those hot principles around blame fixes nothing. You can blame and punish, or learn and improve, but you can't do both. I mean, when you tell your workers that, they go, awesome. So they know that they can raise their hand and talk about what's happened quite openly, knowing that there's no finger pointing, there's no blame going on. I mean, it takes a long, long time, and in our business, it's an easy default setting to find, is to rock back to, it was him, they've done that, that's the reason, they should know better. The blame and train and bloody blame, shame and retrain, and send out a safety alert, and those days.
Hopefully.
Oh, they've got to. It just keeps going around a circle. If you can stop there, but you'll learn nothing.
Yep.
And you'll fix nothing.
Yep.
And all you'll do is you'll dehumanize your workforce while you're doing it.
That's right. You do safety differently book club, I see.
We just started. Well, when I say we just start tomorrow, we're kicking off the first one tomorrow.
Fantastic.
So so we'll see how that goes. I mean, last year I was asked to speak at the Safeguard, the annual health and safety conference, and we were talking about some of the stuff we'd be doing in the hop space. And later that night, and I actually entered an award. It was the first time Safeguard had put a safety 2 category in the evening, and when I saw that, I went, I want to win that. I really want to win that, because I think we're doing it really well, and I don't think anyone else is doing it as good as us. And I'm not really big on awards. I think, often those big businesses with a lot of resources, a lot of capacity, manage to pull it off because they write nice things and it's glossy. But anyway, so I banged out this entry. So we had an awesome session talking to 400 or 500 people about what we're doing in the hop space. The feedback was phenomenal. It was like, oh God, this is great. People are really interested in this. And then that night, winning the award, it was like, oh, this is even cooler. And so part of the reason for entering that is, especially in the energy space, was to send a pretty clear message to a lot of our big corporates, but big global clients, to say there's actually another way of attacking this. And so I've been talking to a whole bunch of different platform forums recently in the last 12 months. And you see some of our clients showing interest. So I thought, you know what, now's the time for a Safety Differently book club. Because I'd seen what the guys in Australia are doing and in North America, and talked to a few people involved with that. And so we got the first one kicking off tomorrow. And we've got and it's just local, it's just our little town. There's about 45 people signed up for it. And there's a lot of our client reps being there. And there are safety geeks, there are operational managers, there is a chief operating officer for one of our largest clients coming. It's like, okay, so we might start seeing some traction. So although it's, we're probably, I don't have not like the Brisbane guys that sit around, drink beer and talk with Clive Lloyd about what's going on. We're going to have it at lunchtime over some sausage rolls, just timing really. But, but the motivation, people are keen. People are keen to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about it. You start talking about that whole new view stuff. No one, certainly that I've spoken to, has gone, well, that's Rob, that sounds like a really dumb idea. Why are you doing that? All been positive. It's all been, hey, yeah, this is cool.
Good.
Yeah.
I've gone to a couple ones here in Perth, and one we had a wonderful gentleman called Andrew Barrett come in and give us an address. And one of the topics that came up on it was organisational learning. Now, you mentioned that earlier, and it reminded me of this conversation. It was, do organisations actually learn, or is it the individuals in the organisation? And therefore, are we in danger if those individuals leave the organisation?
Yeah.
That the organisation will go back to day dot, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think a bit of both, actually. I mean, in our sense, and I've talked to Andrew about this too, but for us, so we started using learning teams a few years ago, with mixed results. Some of them have been great, some of them less so. Predominantly in that kind of post-incident event, post-event kind of situation, but trying to move to a much more proactive situation. And to be fair, I guess I've been driving there. But what we have found is the people, again, the masters of the blue line, the people that know this shit, they're ready to talk. They're there and they want to talk. All I do, because I'm not the technical expertise, the subject matter expert in the work that they're doing. I've got a reasonable understanding, but it's not my area of expertise. So I get these people to tell me exactly, and all I do is I just ask the questions that I think are going to be challenging, or play devil's advocate. So I think if I was to leave, then yes, it would continue, but it's got to be consistent and it's got to be robust, and it's got to be done really well. And and I think, to be fair, someone like Andrew Barrett would say that there's a lot of places trying to do it and probably aren't doing it very well, but at least they're trying to do it. At least they're raising it as an area of importance. So, I mean, currently at the moment, we've got a lot of institutional knowledge in our business. So there's a lot of processes that are in people's heads. So I'm actually mapping those processes out, and I'm using a style of, let's call it a style of learning team to get that. Whereas I don't know the process, but I'll pull it together. And so I'm just kind of managing that process. So if I'm not there, then someone else will be able to pull that up. But it's a concerted effort. You need to be proactive about it, because it just doesn't come naturally. Especially, if you're thinking about, if you're only waiting, the only time you learn is when things go wrong, then you're not going to learn much.
No.
So that's the great thing about, understanding what goes right all the time, and learning from normal work and learning from what goes well.
Beautiful. All right, Andrew, I'll just say this one last thing. the thing what I find talking to workers, and I talk to quite a few, I challenge them whether it's an inspection checklist or whether it's a procedure, and I say, can you tell me that procedure you're following, that checklist you're looking for things? Can you tell me who in your organisation wrote it? What do you reckon the answer is?
Of course not.
No one knows. No one knows.
No.
And we blindly take these things on face value that the person who authored this actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing. And that's the opportunity for learning teams, I think.
Absolutely. Well, you could say the same thing I'm doing at the moment. So you could take this process mapping that I'm doing, and in 2 years' time, said, who developed this? You say, Rob Kirkwood did. Well, what did he know about that? I don't know anything about it. But the guys, I'm just a scribe. I'm just pulling this stuff down, and I'm questioning. I'm going, that doesn't make sense to me. Explain it. Oh, now I get it. Yeah. Right. So what you're trying to say is, and so I just use my skills in that kind of facilitation mode and get the guys off the floor or off the sharp end to tell me how to do it properly. So there's a bit of, you got to be, I think you're right. There's a lot of procedures, especially kind of, management procedures that get developed. Again, it's, work is imagined, but then when you get to the field, it's not how work is done. But we're just trying to work our way around that stuff now, actually, to make sure that those procedures are fit for purpose and current and reflect, the DNA of what we've got. And they're not from they're not a cut and paste from a client document. Yeah. A lot of them around.
Never seen that in any workplace. Oh, dear, Rob. Rob, time's just about run out. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I feel like we could talk for another good half hour or so, but I'm sure you've actually got stuff to do.
Children to feed.
Children to feed, children to look after. Good luck with that.
Gardens to dig.
All the glamorous stuff, mate.
That's right. Solo parenting at its best.
Fantastic,
thanks,
mate.
Tom. Thanks for catching up.
No worries. And Rob Kirkwood, I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Health and Safety Conversations with Tom Bourne. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your week.